All right.
Anybody else?
Well, where is everybody? Sophie, are you here? And I am expecting some more people. Let's see. Okay, well, we'll wait a moment. But anyway, I'm hoping to have some sort of contrasting points of view and things like that. The idea is that it's a little provocative, but that maybe it stirs up some some views and opinions that we might contrast with each other.
Yes. Yeah, I'd definitely like to hear the female point of view.
Yeah,
of this.
I would too. Now there's several Sophies. Hi, Sophie.
Hello, Sophie. You're in the dark.
Well, she's half in the dark.
Half of the dark. Oh, close the door, window. Very good. It helps any.
That's a little better, yeah.
A little better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we'll just get started. How are you today, Sophie? Does your, well, you could hear us, I know that. Does your sound work too?
It seems it's going to work, yeah.
Okay, all right, good. And there's Sam. Hi, Sam.
Good morning, good afternoon, all.
How are you doing today? Your hair looks wilder today.
Well, let's see. I haven't done anything with it, so if I let it down, I look like a shaggy mountain man.
That's okay too. That's what's cool about you. All right. Well, that's crazy. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can do some some headbanging.
I look like I'm in a cave, meditating for 9 years.
Yeah, you do. You do, like you've spent 9 years meditating.
Except that I wouldn't be smiling.
Well, you've discovered happiness is the key to everything.
I think it'll take, for me, at least 15 years.
Yeah, that's what it takes. Okay, I just need to help somebody get here. Hold on a second. Okay, so just giving Cheryl a link there. She is drinking super juice to be ready to go. How are you, Cheryl? Do you hear us?
Now I can, yeah. I have my sound off or something.
Okay, all right.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Oh.
How is it a quick way to always get to this Zoom? Can I save it somewhere on my desktop? Is it the same room every time? Is it a different room?
It's always the same room, and otherwise the link is in the event itself. There's a place where one has to.
I do have trouble finding those events.
Okay, so.
I think it's like you hit the events, the drop down, and you choose events.
Yeah, or you go to, like, I would find the group Conversational Experiments that's out in my left margin because I go there often.
Okay, I have a lot of groups there. But okay, yes, and I went there and I still couldn't find the link.
Yeah, and then the event is usually one of the last few things showing, but otherwise you click on events and then you find it. But you can also bookmark it because it's the same link every time.
Okay, well, bookmark it.
Well, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Well, that's a different question, but it should be possible.
Can I just save it as a link?
Yeah, you just save the text and put it on a Post-it note. Well, then you need to type it in.
All right.
Well, okay, so hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. So today the idea is to have sort of a series of difficult subjects in one way or another, and there could be different reasons for things being a little difficult. It could be it's hard to talk about. We have difficulty sharing it. It's kind of personal, or it could be that it's controversial, and we have very divided opinions about it. And traditionally, there's subjects like sex or religion or politics that maybe are of that nature that once we start talking about them, we start hating each other because we have very different views. And I don't know if that will happen here, but certainly I would hope for us to be able to talk about touchy things without getting in too much trouble with it, because not just because it's a good thing to not go crazy and hate each other, but also because there's something constructive about exploring multiple different points of view, disagreements, that if we can do that well, then something useful will come out of that. Okay, so I don't know where to take that, or if we even have violent disagreement, but I made the topic porn just because that's one of the things that somehow everybody has some kind of relation to or opinion about, which might get the juices flowing. So so personally, I don't know where to start. I don't even know how to define what that is. I forget. Yeah, Miss Sam, you go.
Not to start, but just to add another thought to your list of things that makes it difficult. And this one in particular brings up shame. And shame is not one of the items that you had listed off, but I think it plays, very strongly in porn.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. So certainly that could be a way, or a reason for it not being easy to talk about, because it brings up personal shame. And we often don't have a good way of doing that, certainly not in public. So that's a little bit tricky. And here it's also a little bit dangerous. Like, are you going to talk about your porn habits in public and we record it on YouTube? I mean, it's a tricky thing. But that's why we're here, because it's tricky. Not because it's easy, but because it's hard, as John F. Kennedy said. Mm-hmm. About going to the moon, not about having a conversation about porn, but it applies.
I suppose, Sam, when you were talking about the shame, there's something next to it, besides it, that I feel, which is the element of secret, and the element that's one of the area which is shared the less, even maybe sometimes with the close ones. So
yeah,
it's in between for me. It's the kind of the extremely private area, and the shame, because it's very much the unknown, and it's not talked or shared about the most, or it's shared the least, basically.
Yeah. No, I think you say that very well. I mean, it's sort of maybe private. There's some shame involved. It's things that often aren't talked about, even between people who are very close. One might be married to somebody for a long time without really having talked through sex. Like, what do I want? What do you expect from me? How does that work? It's surprisingly common that couples haven't really figured out how to be open about that, even though this is somebody who's the closest to you. So it's maybe understandable that it's hard. And then porn comes along. Porn, which sort of takes some of the stuff that's the most sort of private and intimate and sort of splashes it out in full high definition color and all the most sort of potentially exciting or intimate things you can think of, it's just right there. You could just access it right away. There's no real foreplay or introduction, or you're not getting close to it. You're not getting to know each other. It's just sort of right there, which sort of violates or it sort of transgresses a lot of barriers, and it throws it straight at you, which clearly can push a lot of buttons. And also it sort of short circuits some things, like the negative side of porn that if one gets used to, like the sort of most thoroughly intimate thing you can think of, you can just sort of click on a link on the internet and have as much of it as you want right away. Then that changes how we deal with it in regular life, I think.
It may or may not. I mean, if you look at Japanese culture, there's a variety of stuff there that just boggles the mind. And yet the reported case of violent crime appears to be less than, let's say, in the United States. Maybe that's not fact. Maybe that, is just unreported. But sometimes there's not necessarily that assumed correlation. So I would test that hypothesis sometime.
Well, yeah, I think it's not necessarily that it makes you do more violent things and so forth. I think in some ways it can be an outlet to see something on video or in a movie that might cross some boundaries. It doesn't mean you have to go and do it afterwards. It might fulfill your need. Now you've seen it. Now it's sort of done. So what I would consider the negative effects would not be so much that. It would more be that you get sort of used to the high right away. Whereas in real life, like romance and getting to know somebody, it takes a while and you need to sort of figure them out and talk about a lot of things. Then it's, and if it's somebody you have a romantic relationship with, you don't have sex with them right away. Usually it takes a little while to work up to it. And once you do, there are certain aspects of it, certain things you might like that you don't get to do right away. It takes another negotiation of sort of getting to it. So I don't know. It depends on how it works for you. But in porn, you sort of skip all of that. The guy just shows up with a pizza box, and like a moment later, you're having your wildest sexual fantasies carried out without any real good reason. And that's rarely how it happens in real life. I mean, it usually doesn't happen to me. I don't deliver pizza, and I wouldn't be against it, but it doesn't happen very often. So it gives sort of unrealistic expectations. And I think that's particularly maybe an issue for young people. Many teenagers now have grown up with porn as sort of the sex education. So you have sort of some crazy, unrealistic expectations about what it is, and you sort of start at the most hardcore place kind of thing, whereas small talk is not like what movies do you like, but like do you do anal or something like that. I mean, they go sort of straight to to sort of the most hardcore porn things they can think of. It's quite common to do that, to sort of skip a whole bunch of steps, and I'm not sure that's healthy.
Well, maybe not directly related to porn, but let me address one particular thing. Let's start with violence, okay? So if there's this correlation between what you see and what you think and do, then let me ask about the propensity of violence in the entertainment business, in movies, okay? And yet there's all this disclaimer about, oh, if you watch it, you're not going to necessarily do it. And yet companies spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars trying to get you to watch a 30-second spot about something. And then there's that correlation that says, oh, well, it's worth it because it's going to drive up sales. And yet billions of dollars spent providing other images and other experiences, oh, that's not going to affect your behavior whatsoever. So I think there's this hypocrisy that's very obvious, that is very convenient when it serves your purpose, and then you're easily able to disclaim it when it doesn't serve your purpose. And I then want to bring that back to porn. People that are very political about porn will say, it's going to make people misbehave. And then other people say, no, perhaps it's an outlet. And other people might say, no, there's just two different kinds of behavior and doesn't necessarily detract from one's interpersonal experience. So let me just throw that into the mix. Over.
It's
I
tricky.
have something to add to that. This TED Talk, I'm just going to throw the link in there, talks about how this is the first generation that has been raised on porn from the beginning. You know, we're different because we're older. And that they're finding out that they can't have healthy psychological relationships with humans because of it. So I'll just throw that in there. It's a very interesting thing to consider. And so I guess if you want to talk about if it's bad or good, you have to think about things like that. Sexuality obviously is good and natural, and we all want to do it. And it seems like no matter what you do with the law, people act as the way they're voting in their mind, what they want to do. So, and we're doing it. So this is something that humans like. So we have to deal with it, but how can we make it safe? And how can we not make it screw up the next generation?
Okay, so so to tie some of those things together, I certainly think you get influenced by what you see. So like if you see a lot of violence, and particularly if you see a lot of people carrying out violence completely coldly and sort of automatically without there being a good reason for it, so to speak, if you just see a lot of people being murdered sort of very quickly and out of the way, then you do get sort of desensitized to that. So it's where it's not so much the violence as such, but it's the showing a certain attitude that who cares? It's just we kill a bunch of people who stand in our way and then we move on. That I think is dangerous. So likewise in porn, there would be certain types of things that somebody would want to show in porn that might desensitize us to things we shouldn't be desensitized to. Like what if it's porn that shows rape? What if it's involuntary? That might give some people an outlet, but it might also get some people used to the idea that that's somehow okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure about that. Mm-hmm. But the problem, even in talking about it, is that people will conflate it with other things that simply they don't like, that they don't agree with. Like there are various types of porn that some people would find objection to, like BDSM, bondage, people who get tied up and whipped or whatever happens. There are many variations of that. For some people, that's a choice of what they do in their lives and is really quite common and popular. Fairly large percentage of people engage in some kind of dominance, submission, bondage kind of thing, consensually. But some people will watch a little bit of that and think that's absolutely horrible. It's like it's violence against other people. It's violence against women. It's misogynistic. And it totally teaches the wrong thing. I don't agree with them, but some people will mix that up with rape. They will treat it as, well, here, what we see on this video is this poor person that's being tied up and mistreated. That's bias, teaches violence against women, even though everybody who participated loved it, and they carefully chose to have a scenario that they like to participate in. So it gets tricky because it mixes up people's buttons are pushed. Like in porn, everything is available, including some things that some people wouldn't choose or don't like, and then they have develop very strong opinions about people who do that. They mix it up with, well, that should be illegal, and then it becomes sort of a mess where it could be healthy that people practice things that they consensually agree on. Like if you both agree that it's fun and exciting to wear like fluffy bear costumes, there are people who do that. Furries that they think it's really cool and exciting and sexual that people wear like fluffy teddy bear costumes. I personally don't see the point in that, but some people do. Some people would look at that and think, well, that's like just animals, because like they're mixing like animal sex, they're mixing bestiality into it, and it's like horrible. And who are these people? So it gets tricky to talk about.
Here's another aspect of trickiness. We talk about literature, and we can easily apply the adjectives good and bad to literature. We can talk about movies and talk about good and bad movies, and you'd recommend to your friends or not. And we can talk about sports, good and bad players and skill sets or whatever. Do people even stay away from applying those adjectives to porn? That there is a good porn and a bad porn, or is it all bad? Because then we're into very strong generalizations. So let me also add in there good alcohol and bad alcohol.
Well, it's tricky again, because some people sort of mix it all up. So it's all bad because it exploits women or something that they have an opinion about, that everybody who's doing it is some sort of victim, that it's some sort of patriarchal thing that exploits women, and who aren't necessarily open to the discussion that maybe the women participating look at it differently. So for some people, obviously, all porn is bad, and it's an example of a whole bunch of other things, of sort of exploitation of women and so forth. Hi, Harry.
Hi.
We're talking about porn.
I know.
Oh. So now separate.
No problem.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You're. We didn't expect any porn, but okay.
Walk your talk.
So like, so besides the thing that some people think all of it is bad and horrible, personally, I think there's good and bad porn. Like, mostly my problem with porn is that a lot of it is bad. Like, I don't buy it. I mean, the guy who shows up with a pizza box and then a moment later they're having sex on the couch. I mean, I would go along with that if certain nuances would need to be there. So personally, I actually prefer porn that's made by women, because then the women usually have some sense of some details that need to be right for that to work. It's no less raunchy than the porn made by men, but the details are more right. Like, foreplay might take 30 seconds, but it's a little more than showing up with a pizza box. Something needs to happen that makes this right. And women porn producers usually have a sense of that, and I notice that kind of detail. So what I think is bad about most porn is it's just sort of quickly thrown together, and it's sort of badly produced. It's high quality video, but it's really bad acting, and I don't buy it. So therefore it kind of doesn't work for me, most of it. If it works for me, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Susan Sarandon is going to start her own porn studio.
She would probably be good at it. And likewise, I mean, one reason for women to do it is that it gets over some of what you could think of the more male-centered or misogynistic angles of it. If it's a guy doing it, it's just about the guys getting off, and they don't like. If it's a woman, it pays more attention to female pleasure, and it pays a little more attention to the way it naturally is likely to happen. So I find it more balanced and in some ways more realistic, because really in most cases sex doesn't happen the way men thinks it happens. Like generally speaking, if it's between a male and a female, it's kind of the female who is the one to decide whether it's happening or not. So whatever happens, it's whatever works for the woman that makes it work. It's not just the guy deciding. It's its time. Whereas the porn usually provides that fantasy that it's just somehow, it just happens just spontaneously. So I would like it to be more realistic for me to buy the idea.
Well, the guys get turned on when the woman is turned on.
Oh.
Right, and that's sort of what porn often does wrong. It doesn't give you much of a hint of what that takes. Like, it's not just showing up, or it's not just being the pool man. Well, sure, it helps if, yeah.
Like an absurd suggestion is a big turn on. Not.
So that's also why it's sort of not very good sort of sex education. I mean, it could be an opportunity to actually teach young people who do watch tons of porn. It could be an opportunity to show them what actually would work, and instead of showing them something that really doesn't work in real life.
That's your next business, Fleming.
There you go. So
online classes for the kids.
Yeah. This is how to do it. Yeah.
Well, that's what it did for me. My first confrontation with porn showed me what women looked like, and it showed me that they apparently had some interest in sex. At least they were willing to undress before the camera and have sex in front of it, which I could not believe when I saw it at first.
That's actually what it did for me too, to be honest.
This is more about honesty than porn, isn't it?
Well, I think that's good. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say I have a little story to tell. How I thwarted my boy. Actually, I knew that the kids were going to end up seeing porn, and the kids in the neighborhood were talking, and it was grammar school. And I tried to raise my kids with a healthy sexual attitude as much as I could. So I went and I got the movie The Blue Lagoon, where Brooke Shields and, I don't know, hot young guy, you know, they just come upon sex in a very natural, beautiful way. And they're very young. And I let the kids watch it. I bought it for them. And they've watched the hell out of that movie. But it was beautiful. And I feel that it got in there first. It took root. It was that exciting moment of discovery. It was that cortisol and adrenaline that sealed that into their brain, that it was something beautiful. So I felt like I was first. I got that first thing in there. And then if they saw anything else, because I knew they would, that they would feel like that was the, what do you call it? Out of the ordinary thing, you know?
Yeah, the cheap ripoff
situation, not the usual situation. And once they have that perspective, I thought that was the best I could do, because.
Okay, and did that work?
I think so, because I think they have very healthy attitudes about sex, and they're in their late 20s. My son is 30. So.
Do you still discuss this?
Oh yeah, we discuss anything. I mean, it's pretty open here.
So did they want to go to Hawaii all the time then?
We did go to Hawaii once, and it was great. But they had their significant others with. And so I'm sure they did a lot of those things.
Well, I think that's a very good way of going about it. So like what many parents otherwise do is sort of the opposite. They sort of try to keep the topic of sex away from the kids and not really tell them very much. And then the kids will surely find porn, which gives them sort of a somewhat twisted version of it, where they could have had a more healthy kind of thing. And that's in part probably because the parents feel a little sort of shame about it. They don't know how to deal with it. And because prevalent attitudes about sex and children, that somehow there's the unrealistic idea that you shouldn't really have sex before you're 18 or something, and whereas they become like when they're 11, 12, or even 10, they're beginning to develop, and it's starting to simmer in their hormones. So what are they going to do with those 8 years in between? They got to have something. So it would make more sense if we could be relaxed enough, or, well, the Blue Lagoon does nothing. It's not porn or anything. It's not illegal to show that to your kids. And I think that's a perfectly excellent idea. But a lot of people, a lot of parents are not that relaxed about it to be able to do that. So they might want to, but they never really figure out how to bring up the topic. So most parents probably do nothing. When I was a kid, my parents mostly did nothing. They didn't really tell me anything. And if on TV there was a movie that had some kind of sexual content, they would tend to sort of send me out and tell me, well, it's time to go to bed, kind of thing. So I mostly sort of figured it out by myself. That was in the like 60s, 70s in Denmark. That was the beginning of porn. Denmark was the first country that made porn legal. I forgot when, 68 or something. But the result of that was that porn was sort of everywhere. So just as kids like running around playing, if there were some workers who had a little shed where they were having like their break, there would be porn magazines lying around, and people found it still a little shameful and so forth. So you would find porn magazines just thrown in the forest and stuff like that. And that was sort of weird to go straight to sort of the things I had never even imagined. And I thought it was very intriguing, but it didn't give me a very positive sense of it. And it was really puzzling what these people were doing. I didn't really quite understand what the idea was, and it wasn't very pretty either. Like particularly in the 70s, a lot of porn was not like today, where everybody's like has had plastic surgery and is really high color, and everybody's like shaven and so forth. Like back then, everything was sort of hairy and ugly, and it didn't seem very appetizing. So I was a little puzzled about what is it that's so exciting about this.
Now
so
we know your preference.
Oh, wow. Hey, I'm flexible, but what actually worked better for me was what worked better for me was finding my dad's Playboy magazines, which I didn't consider porn. I still don't, but that actually provided more of a sort of a gentle aesthetic introduction, because the women were beautiful. It was presented sort of naturally. This is the girl next door, and they seemed like perfectly normal people. And there are articles about sex, but you don't really see any porn. You just see some healthy, naked people. That I could understand. That I found exciting and aesthetically pleasing. So I was glad I had that at the same time, because that gave me more sort of a balanced, what I considered healthy way of dealing with it. And what I consider sort of a healthy sort of thing to aim for. Like Playboy pretends it's an outdated way of presenting it, but like what it is to be a man, that you're treating women well, you're drinking whiskey and smoking a pipe, and you have intellectual discussions and so forth. So it didn't teach me anything sort of horribly twisted, or not that I couldn't live up to it. So I'm glad I had that at the same time as the actual porn, which made me intrigued about a lot of things, made me fairly relaxed about it, but it took a long time before my questions was answered. I didn't understand, why would people do that? What's the point? I was confused, but which didn't get cleared up before many years later. So it didn't exactly help my sexual education.
I like the combination that you mentioned about exciting and pleasing, because it was mostly for me exciting and confronting. And yeah, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel safe to be in that space. And I very much wanted to be, and did not know how, because as I was excited, I wanted to be. It attracted me. Yes. And later, when I got older, I started to dislike porn because I didn't find it believable anymore. I just didn't believe it anymore, so it didn't work for me, which is a shame as hell.
Also, I have almost an opposite reaction to the porn that's being made today versus the porn that was made in the 70s or 80s. I find it impossible to find any actress, or even actor for that matter, who doesn't have plastic surgery, who isn't fake and isn't plastic. And to me, that plasticity, that fakeness is not appealing at all. So it's hard to find, even a natural breasts. You can't find natural breasts in porn these days, it seems. It's considered now a fetish, Yeah.
This is hilarious.
Is there a relationship between the topic and the amount of participants today? Because we've never been such a small company.
Maybe it scared some people away. I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about participants in the porn. I was like, no,
Oh,
now?
I thought there was something with natural breasts, and I don't know.
Yeah, my breasts are plastic anyway.
I have rather small breasts myself.
So do I. And I've often wondered if I should just give in and but no, they would drive me crazy.
You're good either way. You would look good with big plastic boobs, but I think you're fine the way you are.
you could start with one.
No.
Another little story. My exposure, our family was very open about everything and walked around naked, and it was no big deal. And my mom had some things not too well hidden in her closet that we perused. I would call them mostly probably scientific, and we found naked pictures of her, etchings, somebody had done of her. And it was all just fine, it was just really fine. And then and it's odd, Fleming, how when you talked about porn coming of age, first it was legal and then it was all over and it was all about Playboy. I barely have that. I mean, you nudged my brain and took me back, and it made me really realize how much things have changed up till now. And I was a little out of touch with that because I really, being a girl, I knew of the existence of Playboy, but it wasn't a focus in my life. Really never ever was, I never accidentally saw them. It was pretty rare. And then I met my husband freshman year of high school. So, we weren't doing that. So, so I don't have a lot of experience with porn, is what I'm saying. Although I have looked at certain things because I want to know, and I think that it's okay for people to know.
You might be surprised to hear that actually there's a lot of female consumers of porn. Like often it's presented as sort of a male thing, but really quite a sizable percentage of porn watchers are women.
Mm-hmm. I'm becoming aware of that.
Yeah, which I don't know what I'm trying to say with that, but it's just sort of an interesting fact that it's sort of contrary to what the normal thing is, that it's just this sort of male-dominated thing.
Well, which shows the evolution of it.
Yeah, that too, that it's okay now, but also, I mean, it's still, that's the thing, like I mentioned, that it's often men who are producing it, which gives sort of a mixed kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like when I first, I mean, I have a variety of sort of connections or entry points with it. I worked in the computer industry for many years, and the first time I worked for people who did porn, which like people who like porn companies need a lot of computer stuff. They need servers. They have huge, lots of people are watching it on the internet and so forth. So at some point in the 90s, when I first was a server administrator for a while for a company that mainly had porn sites, I was sort of intrigued about, or it was ridiculous in various ways. Like I was the server guy. I sort of managed some of their servers. They had other businesses too. But like I happened to, for a while, be in the same office as the creative team, like the people who did sort of the graphics for their websites, which was, I mean, being used to other types of jobs, that was sort of weird and crazy, like discussing the kind of things you normally would be fired for in an American company. But they're planning like what can attract the most attention on the front page. And also at the time, they had discovered that the best way of making money in porn was to have a lot of niche sites. That means for people who are interested in one particular thing. So there would be a particular website for fat women, essentially. And it had some ridiculously vulgar names. So there would be sort of bigplumpers.com or something like that. And there would be a niche that somebody would like that. So it's porn with only fat women, or it's porn with, or it's various, they like transsexual porn. There's just like 30, 50, 100 different niches, and they would make a website for each one. And I was both intrigued about the sort of outrageousness of hearing these people plan what to put on the website. And I was also always sort of turned off about how unexciting it kind of was. Like I'm cool with porn if it's sort of erotic and aesthetic, and I don't see any conflict necessary. It can be raunchy and being aesthetically pleasing. But this was usually sort of guys who were just sort of trying to throw the worst words they could at it, who didn't really have they didn't personally even care for what they produced. It's just they wanted to hit a certain niche, like this is what people want. People want a 100% anal website. We're going to give them that, and we're going to so a lot of the language around it really sort of turns me off. It's not what I would find interesting. Which always puzzled me, like the people who do it, it's just sort of a mass-produced sort of thing. We need a lot of these things because people buy it, but they're not really into it themselves. And there are exceptions. Like I mentioned earlier, female porn producers often have their heart a lot more into it. They're actually producing stuff that they are excited about and that they like. They're not just sort of cranking out something that makes some money. So I'm sort of divided about that. But I thought it was fun to have some interaction with the industry and see how they actually did it.
It strikes me that there's a lot of different businesses, even in the entertainment business, that we just live and let live, right? We don't tell Hollywood, not directly anyway, how to make their movies. We can critique them, but we can either go or not go. We don't tell authors how to write their books. We don't tell bloggers what to blog. But it seems to me we have strong feelings about what kind of porn ought to be produced. I think there's also an aspect in there that there's this ugly underside of porn that doesn't necessarily happen quite so strongly in other industries. And that is that there is either trafficking going on, or there's abuse going on, or there's a lot of people into drugs and that's the only way they make money. There's a lot of underbelly that seems to be associated with porn that, if it weren't there, might actually make it a much more presentable industry in some ways. But the fact that it is there means that, even if you look at the erotic, the aesthetic, the well-produced stuff, you still don't really understand what's really happening to the real-life people in those situations. And I think that makes it a little bit trickier to talk about as well.
Sex is the underbelly. It's the lower chakras. It happens over there. We can talk about aesthetic and pleasing and natural and niceness and being respectful in sex and all that. Yes, but sex in its most biological way isn't friendly at all. You know how about octopuses, how they have sex? They shoot the sperm into the body of the female, right through the skin. And sex between ducks is basically rape. You know, I could go on. So it's one of our most it's primal drivers for interaction. So it's not, in essence, I don't think it's friendly at all. And we are humans. We love to make this thing more convenient for everybody. So that's what we do. But this underbelly thing, I would not deny it. It's the dark side of sex. It's kind of part of it. That's what I feel.
I think that we evolved from animals, and probably in our history there might have been a time where rape was the way it was done. But I think that orangutans and humans are the only primates that have sex face to face. And
bonobos as well.
Odd that we know these things. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we've all inherited some traits from the past too. Maybe some of us are a little more into the chase, you know, maybe even women like it because they would have been that in the past, the one who's chased. But maybe some of us have evolved more to like it in more intimate ways that are gentler than that. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's all in there in some mix in all of us. And I guess with our consciousness we have now, that we might think about what's healthy for the kids, and we might somehow decide to make some sacrifices to our freedoms in order for the kids' health, or maybe we don't. Maybe we decide to police our kids better. But I think it's complex. You know, it's all of those things.
I agree. You add consciousness to the mix. That makes the difference, of course.
Mm-hmm. And you had the most freedom. You were talking about accessing porn in the 60s, in the 70s. I guess it was different from one country to another. I remember that porn, what I had access to was written porn. So no visual element at all. So imagination was really important, still there to make the click. And now it seems to me that we got back to a kind, I mean, parallelly to what exists and all this freedom and access to what is healthy and what isn't healthy is the cartoon porn. And it makes me really surprised that it's like going back into a circle where it's almost like it's accessible for 5, 6, 7 years old or even 3 years old. So I wonder why this has happened that way, because it's complex, it's healthy, unhealthy, but it has been made back to a very simplistic way. And I'm just wondering what kind of public has been targeted for those porn cartoons.
And is it still the case that women are the primary audience for erotic literature? You know, romance novels?
That's a very good point. I don't have any statistics, but it seems like that maybe brings out more for women because you actually have to imagine some details, whereas guys just want the action, but I mean, that's maybe stereotypical.
Jordan Peterson has data on that. You know, all those, what porn is to men are these the small novels for women with romantic stories about doctors and so. And these are also just as stereotypical as porn is to men. So we have these available super beautiful women that want sex with us, and they have the doctor is one of the archetypes. All women think that doctors are a turn on, and there are 3 more types. I forgot.
Billionaires.
Yes,
he has his own chateau, and yeah.
Yes, and a pirate. And the combination of all 3 seems to be very.
I like the pirate.
You're not here to judge that, but I would like the reaction of the 2 women. Well,
wait, is that real? Pirates?
Yes.
I thought you were kidding. Oh my God.
Pirates, doctors, and millionaires.
So pirates don't work for you, Cheryl?
You know what? They would have to be really clean.
Well, yeah, they're usually dirty.
Blue Lagoon clean.
Okay, so Jordan Peterson, yeah.
That's the Canadian psychologist. What is he?
Yeah, I've been listening a little to him.
Yeah. You can find this clip on YouTube rather easily.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly is the question you want to ask the women?
Well, we were talking about literature, written erotic
preference
stuff, and is that more fitting to women? What the question was, and I think it is, and I think that there's research confirming that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't read it personally, so my answer is my brain goes to, it would be a biological thing. Men probably evolved to spot the woman. So they're visual. They're looking for the woman. Yes. And I don't know, women are probably hiding in the bush fantasizing. I don't know.
You got a point, I think. I tend to agree.
I was in this conversation, I was sort of hoping for that somebody was here who sort of would would absolutely hate porn and think it was like a horrible scourge for humanity or something. Well,
I started to hate it at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because it's just so unreal, and it's kind of it gives me suggestions that will not be true in my real life and all that.
Yeah. Well, I sort of said that earlier too. I thought the problem is mostly that the porn is sort of bad. I don't have a problem with porn, but it's just sort of badly produced. I don't buy it most of the time.
Well, Sam mentioned about the exploitation, and that's a real issue as well. So because when I think about how many people can be hurt, and when I think about how it could be messing up our kids, I don't know, I might think that it's bad. But I would like to have the healthy view of sex, and I like adults to be able to do what they want. And I think people shouldn't diss on a kink, of somebody else's. But it's a hard thing societally, and there is a part of me that would be against it for those reasons.
So can I ask another hypothetical question? Would we be less trapped in judgment if we just imagined a scenario where there was no commercially produced porn? The only porn that existed was the stuff that you produced yourself for your own consumption. If that was the world, then would there be judgment around it?
I think so. We always judge one another.
But that could be really jealousy.
Yes, for instance.
No, I'm saying for your own consumption, not that you share or sell it to other people.
How could you compare?
And your other might actually just consume it yourself.
I think that way it has always existed.
That could be done with what do you call it? Virtual reality, right?
Yeah, you could have your own world, but the problem is sort of then once in a while it will leak. Like somebody's fantasy porn collection will come out, some celebrity, and then everybody else will be judging that. Oh, they're into S&M. That's horrible. So in a way it will make it worse because you haven't seen so much of it, so whatever other people are into will seem much weirder, I think.
Or it would be like blogging. You would subscribe to somebody's porn because you're into the same kind of things they seem to be producing, and it'd be a big library system, or sharing links.
Kind of a porn Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an idea like Facebook, who's showing you just what you already like. So if that was done really well, then you could, if you want to see porn all day long, you would, but nobody else would be bothered by it. It's an idea.
Yeah, just have the virtual reality interface in the Orgasmatron. Just pop in there, have that over in the corner. Can't one of you guys make one of those?
Of our an Orgasmatron? I'd love to.
Well, the virtual reality thing.
I'm into virtual reality. It's a lot of work to sort of make it, but I think that's one of the sort of promises of it. Then people can live in the world they like without necessarily bothering anybody else. I mean, you don't have to just post it on Facebook.
There is this virtual reality city. I forgot the name.
The Second Life.
Second Life, yes. And there are a lot of people who are spent. I saw once a kind of documentary of people who had a enormous sexual, fantastic relationship in Second Life, and they were so great that they decided to meet in real life. Of course, that was a kind of disappointment.
I can imagine, but I think it's a good thing otherwise. I mean, it doesn't, if you can have a happy relationship in virtual reality and do anything you want, then nobody gets harmed necessarily.
Yes, and I understood you could buy the ideal private parts to play with.
Yeah, so people will manufacture like the mechanics of parts. I mean, you could have like 5 penises. Well, you can have whatever you want that you might have a fantasy about, and the parts all work really well.
Well, they have people with those dolls that they take good care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in that vein, you have the emerging market of robotics.
Mm-hmm.
So we could all have our ideal partners, but yeah, then we'll die of solitude, of course. But then again,
well, in a certain sense, that's also what porn is about. Like to give people directly what they want. We can discuss whether it does it well, and we can maybe disagree about whether that's a good thing. I think in principle, people should be able to have what they want in life as long as nobody gets harmed. Do whatever you want, whatever pleases you, hang out with other people who have similar tastes, that's fine. And nobody particularly has any right to stop you from doing that as long as nobody really gets harmed from it. So I think porn is one example of that. But there's the difficulty that porn is all over the place. Even if you don't like it, it's kind of hard to avoid it, which is part of the issue.
Yes, one of the things I became to hate was the huge posters at bus stops when it's dark in December and around Christmas, and you go in the street, you see all these huge posters of beautiful women in their bra, because for some reason they were trying to sell lingerie around Christmas quite a bit. And then I have my mind on certain stuff, and then you get this so in the face that as a male you can't think of anything else for at least 5 minutes. So that's annoying. I came to hate that.
I kind of like it, but okay, so there's different tastes.
This part likes it, that part hates it, you see.
I remember once I had brought the mail in, and I looked and I go, where'd that Victoria's Secret catalog go, Nick? And I'm looking and looking. I finally asked my son, where'd that Victoria's Secret catalog go? And he goes, Jeff and I took it in the forest and we destroyed it.
Really?
Well, he admitted that he took it, but then what he did with it was destroy it.
It's 11 o'clock.
Where?
That's really, where is it 11 o'clock in?
At my house.
In Chicago, yeah.
My
Okay.
computer announces it.
It's 6 o'clock in the evening here.
It's your robotic butler who came in and told you that, yeah?
Yes, my computer announces the time, so I stay on task.
Ah. Well, that is about an hour, so we should start winding down. So, so how has this worked? Our conversation about porn.
Can I add one more thought? And that is this thing that Harry brought up about dolls, and Cheryl mentioned them as well, and sex robots. We've seen in Japan this preponderance of porn lead to a very low rate of sexual activity among the new generation. So if we really were worried about overpopulation, should we be that concerned about sex robots?
Uh-huh.
You know?
Just pass them out. Once you get
We're all so judgmental about things. And
sex dolls for everybody.
Arguably, it's not hurting anyone else, right? You know, if you're just in your own apartment doing whatever you want to with your 2 or 3 robots, you know, what's the problem? Except that as a society, then you have societal effects.
And psychological issues as well.
Yeah, and lonely and unhappy people, but no, yes.
Yeah, but come on, you know, if we're going to go those arguments, we should talk about alcoholism first. We should talk about drugs. We should talk about all these other behaviors. You know?
Totally related, I do agree.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay, meta level, this or not? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I want to say this has been my favorite one. This, to me, has been the most cohesive and enjoyable conversation of all the ones we've had.
Is that the content or is that the amount of participants?
You know, sometimes I think a smaller amount of participants allows there to become an actual conversational thread. But I don't think that was it. I think it was just a lot of things. The fact that it was small, the fact that everyone was lighthearted, the fact that it was kind of real instead of getting really philosophical, you know, which, I don't know, this one just seemed engaging.
I was rather late, so I might have missed the part Simon Stella brought in.
How did you like it, Simon? You didn't say much of anything.
Not say much. Under different venues, I might be able to say more. I'm still uncomfortable about the fact that it does become a YouTube situation, and I have had a very eclectic life, but I'm not going to discuss it on YouTube. I have to leave it at that.
It's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Simon.
Thank you.
To see what I liked also, like Cheryl, I liked here that we were actually discussing something which we haven't. I mean, I've enjoyed most of what we've done, but here we were actually discussing a topic from different sides, quite both rationally and personally, which I liked. And actually we learned a little more about it from different sides, and I like that as a civilized discussion about a difficult topic, and I think we succeeded quite well in that.
Sorry, Sophie.
I felt personally there was quite a lot of freedom in the discussion. I didn't find the subject difficult or painful, although, as Harry was saying, it's there's black and white in the subject, obviously, very strong mix. Yeah, I like that freedom, and I'm just wondering now, where did this freedom come from? The ground obviously was ready, was fertile for it, but I wouldn't have expected feeling that freedom with that subject. So there must be obviously a strong element of trust between each of us to each of us. So that's very good. I didn't find that painful at all.
Excellent.
I could push the boundary a little bit. It seemed like, Ronnie, one of the reasons you proposed this topic was to give people a little bit of discomfort. And if we really wanted to do that, we could have pushed this topic much further than we actually did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Give me an idea. Like, what could we do?
Whoa.
We all share our porn collections. That's what.
Yes. And how we experience it, and how often do you factually
I already shared mine. I put it in the blurbity blurb for all of you.
That's your porn collection?
That's my porn collection right there.
That's not much.
Yeah, that's
Where?
In the links. Well, it's a TED video.
I don't see anything in the chat.
Did you guys get the other video sent to you? One video.
My chat is empty, but I entered later.
Oh, that was not a video, or was it? It was.
Well, I have my porn collection and a video, but if you didn't get the video, I'll send it again.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm just saying that there's a number of ways this could have gone, and we're basically just trying to go outside in on the subject, and this could actually be pushed a whole lot further if we chose to push it that way.
We could make it more personal,
Is
but
that a wish?
I don't know if we will. I don't know.
There's the other link.
I assumed it would address more the part we feel embarrassing or ashamed about or hard to reveal, and even to myself. And could I just dare to share it with you? Kind of truth or dare approach.
Whoa.
The intention that it had to be difficult, and this was not difficult at all for me.
Right.
Yet. I think that sense.
Have a fun conversation?
It was fun, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not what it's about, right?
No, fun is good.
Fun is always good.
Okay.
Discomfort and fun is a cool combination, actually.
That's a great.
You know what? That's called fun comfortable.
Fun comfortable. I'm fun comfortable.
I just went to a retreat, and that was a big topic. Fun comfortable.
Yep.
They really pushed our buttons.
This boundary, that's great boundary. The fun comfortable one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. I don't know what to do next.
We got the name of the next topic.
Fun comfortable. Loving.
I wore this shirt for today.
Loving as fuck. Cool. I'd like that. Yeah. Or AF, that might mean something else.
Is that what it means? I didn't know what that meant.
The AF? Yeah. It's funny. When I go with the kids, they all laugh, but when I'm with the old people, they don't know what it is.
They're like, what is that? Yeah. Association of friends. Yeah.
I pick up a few things from my 14-year-old, but I don't pick up everything.
Okay, so any quick idea of what to do next, other than that it shall be fun, comfortable?
Yes, but what could be a good way to be fun, comfortable? This fine boundary between it. I like it, but also I feel uncomfortable a little. Exactly this threshold. Right,
and here porn. What else? So yeah, Cheryl.
No, I had an idea come into my mind, but it was very errant.
Those are the best ideas. Don't hold yourself back.
No, I was like, we should just put our computer outside the bathroom door and I'll pee.
Okay, that's an idea, yeah. And then we'll talk about what we think about that. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
That'll be a little sort of awkward.
The only problem with that one is, well, nobody would actually object to that one. Then we would each want to take turns, you know.
Oh, yes.
We could. We have those breakout rooms to do that.
Yeah.
One time One time my girlfriend and I went to the bathroom at the restaurant or whatever, and we were in side-by-side stalls, and she made some comment about me peeing like a racehorse. I've never been so awkward about peeing in my life.
Yeah, peeing and farting are topics.
Yeah.
And now when someone says uncomfortable.
At least you're laughing about it, Cheryl.
That's a good one. That's
the
yeah.
fun, comfortable part.
Fun, comfortable.
Yes.
Okay, well, we got our topics. That's settled. Well, maybe not, but we'll think of something. So, okay. So, otherwise, I think this was
Interesting.
lovely. Yeah.
Definitely.
If anybody has more ideas about what to do next, you're welcome to hang around afterwards. We'll discuss it a little more.
Don't put that last part on YouTube.
No, that will be all censored before it gets broadcast. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, there'll be a black thing over your eyes for the whole video here. So we don't know who said it. Yeah, we'll all be like that. No, that's cool.
I might watch.
Anyway, so thank you all for coming. Hope to see you another time for a fun, comfortable conversation.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye, guys. Stop recording.